what if I told you there's a teaching strategy that's, well, it's incredibly powerful, it's backed by some really solid evidence, and here's the best part, it requires almost zero prep time. We're going to dive deep into a simple technique that can totally transform what your students actually remember.
You know the look. We've all seen it. You're in the zone, you're delivering what you think is a fantastic lecture, the content is killer, and then you see it, the eyes glazing over. Well, guess what? It's not you, and it's not them being lazy, it's just brains. The research is pretty clear that after about 10, maybe 15 minutes, a student's ability to hang on to new information just plummets. So, what do we do about it?
Welcome back to Simplified Teaching, where we demystify pedagogy. Today, we are looking at the peer-reviewed evidence for one of my absolute favorite strategies out there. It's called the pause procedure. And we're not just going to talk about what it is, we're going to break down the science of why it works and exactly how you can start using it tomorrow. All right, so here's our game plan. First up, we're going to tackle the overloaded brain problem. Then we'll get into the juicy research, starting with the OG experiment on pausing. We'll also dig into a really fascinating follow-up study and a massive meta-analysis to get the full picture. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a simple action plan for you.
So, let's kick things off with Section 1, the overloaded brain problem. This is really the core challenge that we're all up against. It explains why even the most dynamic, engaging lecture can sometimes just fall flat. And the science behind this whole thing is something called cognitive load theory, or CLT. The idea is actually super simple. Our working memory, that's the part of our brain doing all the heavy lifting with new information, it's got a really limited capacity. And if we try to shove too much in there at once, learning doesn't just slow down, it literally stops. I absolutely love this analogy. It just makes so much sense. Think of your working memory like a tiny, maybe kind of cluttered workbench. You can only work on a few things at a time before it becomes a total mess. But your long-term memory? That's a vast, organized warehouse. The entire goal of teaching really is to move ideas from that little workbench into the giant warehouse. And a nonstop lecture? That's like pointing a fire hose at the workbench. Most of the information just washes away. So how do we solve this fire hose problem? Well, that's where our first key study comes in. Section 2, the original pause experiment. This is the research that really gave us the first solid proof that a simple pause could change everything. All right, so back in 2014, these two researchers, Bacal and Thaumann, set up a really clever experiment. They took 150 medical students and split them up. One group got a straight 50-minute lecture, no breaks. The other group got the exact same lecture, but with 3 short pauses built in for them to chat and review their notes. And the result? It was huge. The pause group did way better on a recall test 15 days later. Now, okay, the limitation is that it was just med students. But for proving the concept, it was a game changer. We're giving it a solid 4 out of 5 for impact. And wow, just look at this chart. It really tells the whole story, doesn't it? This wasn't a small difference. The group that got to pause had significantly better long-term retention. So this isn't just about feeling a bit more refreshed in the moment. Those little breaks led to real, durable learning that stuck around for weeks. The visual here just makes it undeniable. Okay, so we've established that pausing works. Simple enough, right? Well, not so fast. This is where the story gets really, really interesting. Section 3 asks a super important follow-up question. Who should be in control of that pause? So, a much more recent study from 2022 by Liu, Lin, and Kalyuga took this to the next level. They had 3 groups, one with no pauses, one where students could pause a video whenever they felt like it, and a third group where the pauses were pre-programmed to happen right before the trickiest parts. And the finding was a bombshell. The pre-programmed instructor-controlled pauses were way more effective. Get this, the student who chose to pause the most often actually didn't have the best results. It turns out we're not always the best judges of when our own brains are overloaded. For that insight alone, this one gets a 5 out of 5 from us. Now, you might be thinking, okay, 2 studies, that's interesting, but how solid is this evidence really? Great question. And that brings us to our third source. It's a meta-analysis, which is basically a study of other studies. It's not about pausing itself, but it gives us the quality control we need to feel confident in these findings. Also, in 2022, Chowdhury and Singh published this massive analysis of 132 different studies. And what they found was that experimental studies, exactly the kind of A/B test setup we saw in our first 2 sources, have a much bigger, more reliable impact on learning than other research methods.
So here's the takeaway. This meta-analysis gives a massive thumbs up to the kind of research we've been looking at. It tells us the evidence for the pause procedure is the real deal. It's solid. Okay, time to put it all together. This is my favorite part, the data war. We're going to put these studies head to head to see where they agree, where they clash, and most importantly, what the whole story tells us. This table really lays it all out for us. You can see there's a lot of agreement. Everyone confirms that breaking up instruction is good for learning. But the key tension, the real evolution in our thinking, is right here in this last row. That first study from 2014 basically proved that pausing works. It implied that any pause is a good pause. But the 2022 study by Lou's team was more sophisticated. They asked how pausing works best, and they proved that the instructor-designed strategic pause is the king. The meta-analysis just tells us why we can trust these powerful experimental findings in the first place. Phew, okay. So after digging through all that research, what's the actual bottom line? What does this all mean for you in your classroom on a Tuesday afternoon? Here are the 3 most important principles to take away from all this. Okay, number 1, and this is a huge mindset shift. Pausing isn't lost time, it's invested time. You might feel like you're covering less, but your students are actually retaining more. Number 2, you, the instructor, are the architect. That Lou study was crystal clear. Teacher design breaks placed strategically before the hard stuff are way more effective. And third, the goal is consolidation. A pause can't just be dead air. It needs a purpose. Review your notes, ask a neighbor a question, something that helps move ideas from the workbench to the warehouse. All right, enough theory. Let's make this super practical. Section 7 is your action plan. I'm talking about concrete steps you can literally take in your classroom this week. Here we go, 3 simple steps. First, identify your red zones. Before your next class, just look at your lesson plan and find the 2 or 3 hairiest, most complex moments. Plan a 2-minute pause right before you get to them. Second, assign a micro task. Don't just let them drift. Give a quick active instruction like summarize that last point to your partner or jot down one question you have. And third, this is so important, explain the why. Just take 30 seconds to say, hey, we're pausing because it's scientifically proven to help your brain store this stuff better. That little bit of transparency works wonders for getting student buy-in. Ultimately, this is all about reframing how we think about those quiet moments in our classroom. The pause isn't an empty space. It's the moment where our instruction ends and their learning truly begins. That's where the magic happens. Hey, if you got something valuable out of this research breakdown, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to Simplified Teaching. We drop a new analysis every single week, and you are not going to want to miss what's coming up next. And by the way, if you want to support our work or check out the studies for yourself, all the links are right down there in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.